Welcome to the 100 Master Coaches series featuring master coaches from around the world. Let's journey together on this 100 Master Coaches series, with your host, Coach Mel, MCC. Tracy Sinclair is a Master Certified Coach, Coaching Supervisor, Mentor Coach, and ICF Assessor. She works as an international corporate executive and board-level coach, a leadership development designer and a facilitator working with a wide range of organizations. Tracy also specializes in working with organizations to support them to develop a coaching culture. Now on to the show.
Hello, and welcome to the 100 Master Coaches show. This is Coach Mal, and today my special guest is from Surrey, England. She's none other than Tracy Sinclair. Would you give her a big round of applause? Welcome to the show, Tracy.
Thank you so much, Mel. It's lovely to be here.
Let's talk about your journey. How did that begin for you, Tracy?
My journey into coaching actually began after I had my two children. I've got twins who are now 18.
Nice.
And when I took some time out when I had them and I was thinking about coming back into my business, I wanted to just reset the direction, refresh my skills, refresh what the work I was doing. So I went to a few different conferences and seminars, and I came across someone talking about this thing called coaching. And I thought, well, what's that? Because I had wondered if it was similar to counselling, because I used to work as a counsellor in the field of addiction with drug and alcohol addicts. And that was something that always really interested me. But I was quite intrigued, therefore, by what was coaching and how was it different. And the person that gave a wonderful presentation that day at this conference said that he believed that coaching was not created by a few bored people in a coffee shop somewhere, scratching their heads trying to think about the next cool thing to do.
That's right.
His view was that coaching was emerging as a way of communicating with ourselves and others to meet a need in the world.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, like you just said, I thought, my goodness, that's inspirational. So it hooked me and I started to find out more. And not too long afterwards, I was training and signed up on a course to learn. And as they say, the rest is history.
Yes, they do. I've heard this story, obviously different from others, but there are some similarities, coming through some sort of transition, having some sort of pause in the middle of the road or a fork in the middle of the road. And you're like, let's take a little breather, reset, and let's see what opens up. And wow, imagine that. You could have actually opened up to anything. Were you actually open to a lot of other things besides coaching at that point of time?
I mean, I do think I am quite an open person, and I'm a very naturally enthusiastic person. So I can get really, really passionate about things quite easily. But coaching just seemed like the thing I wanted to do, because I think what appealed to me about counselling was I have always been very fascinated by how we function. So behavioural sciences and psychology has always been an area of huge interest for me. And my business up to that point was in the broad spectrum of leadership development, which was also in that same space of growing, learning, developing, being the best we can be. And so it really did seem as though that was the natural path to take. If I'm honest, on a personal level, there was another path that was very appealing to me at that time, which I chose not to take, which was to become a yoga teacher.
Okay, there you go.
So I was really into yoga at the time and still am. And I did consider doing my yoga teacher training. But I went down the path of coaching, and so it continued.
Well, thank you. that little bits of twists and turns often come along our way. And then, well, we've got to decide. And I'm sure you and I have met people coming to us, right? Even asking, Tracy, they're like, what does it take to be a coach, right? Can I be a coach like you? So I'm just going to start there now. When someone comes up to you, Tracy, what is your little 3 pointers to them to kind of say that, do you have this, or are you passionate about this? What would you say?
I mean, my immediate response to that, Mel, is absolutely yes. Of course, you can become a coach, because for me, coaching is not this elusive skill that is just for the few, as it were. I really do believe that coaching is something that's beyond a skill set and is just more about how we communicate. So for me, of course, anyone could become a coach. I think one of the biggest barriers that at least I have come across, both in others and most certainly in myself, is the biggest barrier can be that I only see it as a skill that I apply to other people. So it gets limited to the doing of something, and I do that to someone else or with someone else. And that lack of recognition that actually to really coach well, we have to work on ourselves and really know who we are and manage ourselves, challenge ourselves, be compassionate with ourselves, all of those things that we would encourage a client to do and be. We have to be absolutely prepared to do the same with ourselves. And that often is the hardest learning point, perhaps.
Totally agree with you, Tracy. It's like us holding up the mirror to our clients so that they can see themselves in a different light. And then when we are alone, we've got to hold up the mirror to ourselves too, to kind of see from the different angles, maybe some things are not as it is. And as you say, be open about it. Yeah,
most definitely. I now really enjoy that part. I think in my early career as a coach, if I'm totally honest, I was probably a little bit oblivious to that. That would be a blind spot, because what I knew about coaching was that it was a skill I wanted to learn to work to use with other people. So that early relationship with coaching was about a skill and the doing of something and doing it well. Then when I started to realize, actually, there's more to this than meets the eye. This is just about as much about me as the practitioner as it is about the work I'm trying to do. And that felt like a real head scratcher, me thinking, oh my gosh, I have to be perfect then. I have to have everything resolved in myself. But now as time's gone by and I'm perhaps, got a few more grey hairs, I start to have more compassion for myself at the same time, but just more be comfortable and relax into that idea of being a lifelong learner. I know that sounds like a terrible cliche. We use it all the time, but I really feel as though that's what I want to embrace now.
We can all be that lifelong learners for ourselves, as well as we serve our clients. Let me ask you, how was your couple of years at the start of it when you went into coaching? I know you did say that you were part of that leadership space already. What happened after you got certified?
On the one hand, I was fortunate in that I already had a business which had some momentum. I'd been working on my business already for a few years. So it wasn't as though I had to suddenly start a whole new profession from scratch. So that was quite fortunate for me. But the challenging side of that meant that I was distracted from really immersing myself in coaching, probably for the first 3 or 4 years, because I was still offering such a wide portfolio of work. And I can remember trying to find every single possible opportunity to introduce coaching into leadership development programs and all sorts of things like that, which of course I did, over time, those things came through. One of the biggest challenges I found, actually, which I believe is still often a challenge for coaches now, is that a lot of times people didn't know what I was talking about. And there was still, and more so back then, but still now, a misunderstanding in many areas of what coaching actually is and what it is not. How it differs or is similar to things like counselling, therapy, mentoring, consulting, all of those kinds of things. And I hadn't early on expected the role that I would have to play in almost educating or trying to explain what it was that I was doing. So I can remember doing so many presentations years ago on what actually is coaching before you can really get to doing any of it.
I have done that myself, the whole education of the difference. And somehow I realized from my journey of that education, I realized that sometimes the language that we spoke were a little foreign to the people we're speaking to. And so one of the things I did was to actually remove those jargons, those coaching jargons from my language and make it a little bit more simpler for the people to understand. So for example, if it's head of department, they wanted to talk about talent development and obviously KPIs and performance and better connection with their stakeholders. I wouldn't talk the coaching language, I would talk their language. So to help them understand that actually it is not different than having a wonderful, open, honest conversation with someone and allowing them to shine and take accountability of their responsibility. So when they heard that, they're like, I like that. I like that thing called coaching because you're getting them to be accountable. So that worked for me. What about you, Tracy?
Yeah, well, it completely resonates, Mel, what you're saying about speaking their language. And it made me think about the coaching principle almost of meeting our clients where they're at. Rather than us as coaches imposing our language, we try to work with our clients' language, don't we? So of course it would make sense, absolutely, to do that. I also found that actively demonstrating with people what coaching, to give them an experience, that was what I did quite a lot of as well, which I'm sure many coaches do, to give demonstrations. In fact, sometimes I used to feel a little bit like some kind of magician doing a magic show or something, where you invite the person up from the stage to work with you. But I can remember approaching some friendly clients that I'd been working with, say, can I come in and talk to you about this and maybe demonstrate and do it? So I think in those early times in our careers, we've really got to try all sorts of different ways to connect with people and also to help them to understand what it is that we're trying to offer them, really.
Yeah. And I also hear coaches say, I just want to do the coaching. I just want to do the work, right? And then there's the other element, obviously, which is the business side of it. Some of us may say, it's drudgery, right? It's like, I've got to do this, I've got to write proposals, and I've got to, talk to clients and network with people, the whole list.
Yeah.
What do you say? You've been running your business for a bit right now and going through the motion, obviously, through the years and still going through it. What would be your little advice for those who are perhaps starting out and finding it a little bit difficult?
Yeah, I think, Mel, you speak the clear reality of the fact that we can't just do the coaching. You know, maybe we could try, but we probably wouldn't have many clients because there's no business development or whatever happening.
Yeah.
So I think there is that hard fact of life almost, that when we go into our coaching practice to set that up, we are actually setting up a business. And when I'm teaching coaches, at least, one of the things that I share with them or invite them to think about is, you know, if you were thinking about leaving your job or retiring from your job or whatever it is that the transition you want to make, and you were thinking about setting up a bakery or a shoe shop or, you know, opening up a fashion line or something, you would have a business plan. You would be thinking about what your fee structure would be, how you'll market yourself, what your brand is and your image, all of those business related things. And so I'm always encouraging coaches to really try to at least think about that mindset, to treat it as though the reality is it is a business. However, do we want to do those things, and do we have the skills for those things? You know, I've had to learn to become a salesperson, and it's been like pulling teeth, I would imagine, because I hate selling, to be honest. But it's one of the things that I've had to learn. But then I also think that we have to maybe ask ourselves, if I don't want to do those things, or I can't do those things, whatever that might be, probably more that we don't want to, because I'm sure we can learn those things if we want to do them, is then to think about, well, how do I make it happen? Who will do them for me? And of course, I think, at least in my experience, many coaches are subcontracting different parts of their work to people that they're paying, you know, individual contributors in their own field. But then, of course, you've also got a lot of associate work that a lot of coaches, especially in the early days, may tap into as well, where they're part of a bigger organization that finds the work for them. So there are pros and cons, I guess, aren't there, really, of how we want to go about it.
And then, of course, there are coaches who are made for the organization, right? You've got internal coaches. So they could be the ones double hatting, right? Their main role as a HR person, their main role as even any other role. And then they take on this other coaching skill set as well as role sometimes in an organization, and officially champion that coaching culture, because a lot of organizations these days are talking about the coaching culture. And I know that's one of your favorite topics to talk about too. So would love to hear from you about that coaching in the workplace.
Well, most definitely. I mean, I think this is a natural part of the evolution of this work, in that coaching started out being a one-to-one kind of arrangement, to a one-to-many, one-to-group, one-to-team, but then you've got the one-to system. And there's a natural evolution, I think, as coaching is evolving, that is taking us to that more systemic level. And frankly, I think that's where we need to go, because if coaching is going to be part of how we all communicate with each other, then it needs to be something that is systemic. And so the role of coaching in organizations is critical. And of course, you've got, as you described, the internal coach who may be fully coaching internally or doubling up with another role, and then also the managers and leaders, which I think is a really influential part or role within an organization, for leaders to have great coaching skills as well. And then we see that ripple effect of coaching happening, all of those conversations throughout the organization that increasingly get informed by either coaching skills, or I would also say a coaching mindset. Just some of the mindset or the values almost that come from a place of wanting to coach someone rather than tell them or direct them. that ripple effect really can be very transformational for organizations and therefore their culture. Very exciting space, and it's lovely to see more organizations engaging with this now.
Definitely. And I love what you just said, right? It's not just the coaching skill sets, but it starts with that coaching mindset. And that will be actually what I call, it's like a coaching lifestyle, right? So it becomes part and parcel of the things on the wall, the furniture. It is all part and parcel of the way we live and work, and as we say, talk together. It's all part of that. And that starts with that shift in that mindset, doesn't it?
Most definitely. And I think the mindset, as we were talking earlier, that the focus is often so much on the skill, which of course is important.
Yes.
But the skill without the mindset is going to have limitations, in my humble opinion, because the mindset is what opens up and really allows the skill to be displayed, or to be shared, if you like, in a way that's going to be really congruent and meet values.
I'm just curious, Tracy. As we're talking about this mindset and culture, what would you say that could be some sustainable keys if an organization really wants to embark into a coaching culture, coaching mindset, and not just having those 2-day coach as manager programs, as we're all aware of, which are good, don't get me wrong, but perhaps not too sustainable right after those 2 days? What would be some of those pivot points that could be so important for an organization to take on this coaching a little bit more sustainably?
I mean, if I think about the organizations that I at least am aware of that have made a successful progress with transforming culture, is it absolutely does go beyond those 2-day training programs. Although obviously they're part of it, and I think what I notice in organizations is there's almost this multiple intervention points. So you're not just targeting on one group of people. You're not just targeting on offering coaching to people that have got to a certain level in the organization. There's at the highest possible level, there's a sense of equity, if you like, in as far as the accessibility to coaching is concerned. And that mindset, I guess, needs to come from the top as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that all senior leaders within an organization have to be certified coaches necessarily. I think there's a fitness for purpose element to all of this as well, especially in an organization. But it's the attitude, because I think attitude is what informs culture. And leaders are highly influential in an organization. And I think of leaders almost, it's a little bit like parenting, when they say you're never not parenting. Even if you think you've switched off and you're behaving in a way that you wouldn't advocate your children do, you're parenting 24/7.
24/7,
whether you like it or know it or not. And leadership is a similar thing in a way, that whatever you're doing, however you're responding or reacting, you are leading. Whether it's intentional, whether it's positive and helpful is another matter, but you're leading all the time. And so I think somehow, if we can really try to infuse and work with the mindset piece, then that, coupled with some great interventions of skills that are fit for purpose in various parts of the organization, then you can really get a lovely, the perfect storm perhaps coming up.
Yeah, sometimes you need a little bit of a storm to kind of shake things around. And then it happens. I've heard of stories where companies were going through some issues that obviously needed a bit of that shaking and a bit of that reset, a bit of that rethink what they're doing with their people. It's very relevant what you've said. Thank you. Over the last 18 years, I'm sure you've learned for yourself quite a bit of insights and through your reflection. Would you kindly share a couple today for the audience?
Well, I think one of the big insights I've shared already around, focus on self as well. I love this term of self as instrument. So really looking at how we can develop our own person, our own skills, our own being. But other things that I've learned along the way, one of them is very simple, which is to slow down, stop talking and listen. And I think, if ever I'm giving feedback to other coaches and of course still to myself, is we can often be so keen to help or to solve or to add value or to prove ourselves or whatever it might be that's driving us, that we can very easily get in the client's way. And I think one of the biggest skills of coaching is actually a non-verbal skill, which is silence. Is just really to hold a space for someone and deeply trust in them and yourself and that space, that something really valuable for them will emerge. And I think often we can, as coaches, work too hard because of those things that drive us. We can sometimes work too hard. And so my advice, if I was going to be in the business of giving advice, which of course as coaches we're not, but if I was to invite people to think about it, it would be to slow down and really deeply listen and really focus on what do you need to do to be as present and available to this other person as you can. And then the rest will come, with good training. The skills, they're in there. With good training, the skills will come through rather than us trying to force them through in some kind of a really cool coaching checklist.
Absolutely. So simple, yet so difficult. And I'm still learning that every single time, reminding myself every single time, okay, even in a conversation, right? Trying to hold myself back because I get so excited.
Well, it's human nature, isn't it? It's just human nature. And I suppose, that some of the competencies I think talk about self-management, don't they? And self-regulation. Yes. Boy, do we need to do that sometimes.
Yeah. I was about to ask, do you have a practical way that you hold yourself back? Is there something you say to yourself inside you, or is there something there, an anchor somewhere? What do you do?
Actually, maybe this is where my yoga comes into play a little bit for me, because I just focus on my breathing. And I think about that yoga practice of, maybe breathing in for 2 and breathing out for 4, or whatever count, you're wanting to do. But to just connect with my breathing for a couple of breaths and allow it to slow down. Because while I'm doing that and I'm focusing on that, I can't speak. So it helps me to pause, to press that pause button. I think the other thing on a practical level for me that's really important and has become more important, actually, given the kind of world we live in nowadays, is really having space in between sessions. Not that I would ever have clients back to back, of course, but I need more space now. I find I need a bit more space to find myself, to let go of whatever I've been doing before that session, not engaging with what I'm going to do after that session, because we have so much going on in our minds now, so much going on in the world. And I think that ability to quieten ourselves and get ready to be available is such an important part of our practice that it's very easy to dismiss, even especially in a virtual world where we can literally click from one Zoom to another within almost seconds. So I think that discipline of giving myself and therefore my client my preparation time is really important.
I love that. Practical and very needed. Like what you said, especially in this time where everything around us is probably clamoring for our attention. Not just us, but our clients, society, even how we think we have more time today because we're so savvy in the way we can appear so professionally on Zoom, but there's so much on the inside. I'm just hearing in on what you're saying. So much of this important preparation on the inside before it comes out on the outside.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think the term stillness comes up for me. It's something I've been writing about in my journal and reading about is stillness, because the world is not still in so many ways. As I said when we very first started about how things feel quite tumultuous here in the UK at the moment, and of course in most places in the world, many places in the world. But our inner world and our outer world can in some ways be mirrored, can't they? And so it's that, and for me that's the beauty of coaching. That's the essence of coaching is the pause, is to pause and allow some stillness so that the wisdom can come up. And this reminds me, actually, if I've got time to share a quick story from some meditation studies that I did years ago, which was when I studied transcendental meditation, and the teacher said that she gave me a metaphor to help describe the process of TM. And she said that when you first meditate and you drop down in terms of your brain waves, you drop down a little bit. She said that's like doing a spring clean in your house. So you're going around and you're washing the surfaces and sweeping the floor and freshening up everything so that you can be clear and fresh. And she said, but then there's the next piece, which is then when you go further and the stillness deepens. She said, then the wise sleeping elephants wake up and they come up to offer their wisdom. And I've always been so struck by that story. And for me, it has quite a lot of parallels with coaching, is how can we invite stillness for both our client and ourselves so that the wisdom can emerge amidst just the noise, just all of the noise that we're experiencing.
And as you were saying that, I'm imagining that in our clients' world of noise and busyness and performance, they probably look forward to the stillness that they can get away from it. It's like going for a quick retreat, right? Where we know we're going to be, our whole senses, from the smells of lavender and the oils in the air, and it's not cold, but it's room temperature, and you walk in barefoot and you're experiencing with fullness of yourself and just listening in on that inner voice, which is probably telling you lots of things, but we're just so busy to listen. So that reminds me of this wonderful space that coaches have such a privilege. We hold that space so importantly for our clients.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm also excited to ask you, as we progress, obviously, as coaches, getting certified, some obviously go on to join the ICF, and then they start their journey, their credentialing journey, right, as they move forward. And of course, they start putting up their hands and say, I will volunteer as being part of a chapter in my local community and start being a part of that community. Tell us your journey about that. Obviously, a very exciting one. I'm leading towards that pinnacle that you have reached. I would love to hear that story, how it started for you.
Well, as soon as I trained as a coach, I joined the ICF. In fact, I joined a couple of professional bodies to begin with. I didn't really know quite who was what in the field. So I joined the ICF, and I joined a professional body that was in the UK. For me, that was always really important because there was something about professionalizing what I was doing. I wanted to feel that what I was doing had integrity and was, sort of not auditable as such, but had a level of substance and rigor that I could share with my clients. And so I was always involved with the ICF, and then I just found myself, I don't know quite how. Oh yes, I do know how, actually. I've just remembered. I was on a training program where I met a lady, Hilary Oliver, who is also pretty well known in the field of coaching, and she said to me, well, maybe you'd like to volunteer, because she was on the UK ICF board at the time. In fact, I think she was just about to be the president of the UK ICF. And she said, there are different projects that you could get involved in. And I just, I am ever the enthusiast, which is part of my qualities, but also part of my downfall as well, because I can get enthusiastic about too many things. But I thought, wow, that sounds great, because I could actually learn more. And that has always been such a wonderful part of volunteering for the ICF, in that, yes, you are giving of your time. However, I have found it to be so valuable to me, because I have learned so much more about coaching, but also so much more about the profession of coaching, how it's growing, how it's being defined, how it's being used. And not just here in the UK, I was immediately then exposed to an international community. And I have made many really great friends because of that around the world, some of whom I've never seen in person, and some of whom I have. And also to have hopefully, therefore, made some kind of contribution. I think that's always felt important to me. And I think if you can, there's one thing sort of saying, well, this isn't right, or that's not right, or we should have more of this or less of that, or whatever. And I think, well, if I really feel about those things, if this is important to me, why don't I actually get stuck in, get involved, and try to make a difference? So I've really, for me, the ICF has been my professional home, as it were. And because I've spent most of my professional career working quite independently, I mean, I do work with a small team of very trusted and valued colleagues, but it can be a little bit of a lone profession for a lot of people. And so for me, the ICF was my home, my professional home. It was, I felt that was the team, if you like, the team of people that I've been involved with. And that's been very sustaining for me. So hopefully it's been a reciprocal relationship. I think this volunteering doesn't have to be a one-way process. You know, for me, I feel as though I've gained enormously by the different roles I've had and the things I've been involved in.
Yeah. Thank you for volunteering. Thank you for being one of our chairs over the years. And I know you're still part of the board today. There must be this pool, and I know you've said quite a few things already about that whole team, that home, professional home. I'm just sensing that there could be just that bit that holds us true to the ICF. It just draws us back again and again. I know I have never stopped becoming a member. And obviously being whenever I am in different times of my journeys of staying, I've moved chapters, but I've always been connected with the local chapter. So I'm just wondering, what is that just keeps you just going and pressing on and being even more available to this global community?
I don't know if this is a very good answer, Mel, to be honest, but I just can't imagine not doing it.
That's a good one.
You know, that's just my really honest answer, is that this is about, for me, a part of coaching is about exchange. You know, there's something that happens in a coaching conversation or in a team or an organization or whatever. And I just don't feel like it would work if I was just out there on my own doing things. That feels very flat, just very one-dimensional. And so to be part of the community and to contribute in whatever way you can, you know, I mean, different people have different ways that they like to make their contribution. But if you can find the way that works for you, then that to me is what keeps it alive. It keeps me engaged. It keeps me fulfilled. I keep learning. I'm meeting great people. How would I not want to do that? You know, I just can't imagine not wanting to do it. And I'm coming off of the global board at the end of this year. My final, I'm just not allowed to do any more time at the moment, which is probably very appropriate because you need to have new people coming through, obviously. So I am wondering now what's my focus for next year. So I'm sure I'll be involved in something. I'll find something to.
I'm sure too. Yeah, it's the unspoken, right? It's in you. It's in me. It's just been. I think the word that comes from me, it's like family. Yeah, it's just part of you. Yeah, I love what you just said. It is impossible not to be part of it. I love that.
And we all can play, you know, a bigger or a smaller part. I mean, obviously, not everyone has lots of time on their hands to volunteer. So I don't think it's, you know, we all have to balance what we can do. But it doesn't have to be lots and lots of time. It could just be being involved in one project, one task force, one idea. It's that cycle then, and that exchange that's going on between us that then gets replicated. That's exciting.
Definitely. I would like to tap your thoughts as we come almost to the close of this conversation. What that future kind of looks like for you in coaching.
I ask myself that question almost every day, Mel, and I don't have a very clearly mapped out answer to that because it's evolving all the time. But I certainly know that I want to continue with the work that I'm doing. I love studying and learning more about this discipline, and that takes me to other peripheral subjects, you know, of interest, whether it's things like yoga or mindfulness or stillness, other forms of psychology, spirituality, you know, quantum physics, whatever it might be. You know, I'm just allowing now my interests to go where they want to go, which is really exciting. And I know that one of the things that I've done I guess almost all of my life is to teach in some capacity. I started out as an English and Spanish teacher many, many years ago. So I love teaching. I love the experience of sharing and what I then get back in that process. So I would imagine that will continue. But I've got a couple of projects that I'm really involved in that I want to spend a lot more time on, which are, one is around mental health, and the other one is around coaching for younger people, young leaders. So some projects that I really want to give even more of my time to next year. That's
beautiful. And I look forward to hearing what you have in store on your next part of your journey. There are obviously coaches walking in our industry right now as we speak. What would be that master wisdom? There's probably one that you like to drop into their ears today.
I think a very practical thing comes to my mind straight away, which is get trained. Be well trained. There are some wonderful training programs available for coaches around the world now, and so choose well, because it's an investment of people's time and in a lot of cases their own money. So I would think that getting good training, I know that served me well when I started. I think that would be a piece of a sort of advice that I would offer. But also to be patient. This coaching isn't something that you don't necessarily finish your training and then the very next day you've got a whole coaching practice waiting for you. So going back to that sort of business mindset and being patient and working at it. But I think the most important thing, as I'm discovering now, is just embrace what you don't yet know. I know this again sounds such a cliche, and we're taught in coaching, aren't we, about being comfortable with not knowing, but we're so obsessed often with knowing as much as we need to, or knowing as much as possible, and anxious about the gap. And yet the gap is where the opportunity is. And so if we knew everything, that would be a bit boring, wouldn't it? So I would just say embrace the long journey here. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So embrace the long game and just enjoy the learning along the way.
So applicable, not just for young coaches coming in, but everyone. Embrace it. Our final question is often this, and as coaches, we ask meaningful questions. As you are sensing this through, what question comes to mind that you may want to just leave behind for the audience listening to you today?
Well, I'm going to steal a question that my coach often asks me, that is usually the most powerful question he asks me. And the question is, if you're being faced with a challenge or something that's difficult, something that's testing you, something that's painful perhaps, the question he always asks me is, Tracy, right now, in this moment, what are you being invited to learn?
That is so beautiful. What are you right now invited to learn? So right now, we'd like to give you this time to give us a couple of your contact handles, social media, so that people can come in contact with you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, my website is tracysinclair.com, and my pretty much all of my handles on LinkedIn and Facebook are Tracy Sinclair or Tracy Sinclair Limited. And my email address is tracysinclair.com. So it's quite simple, really. I would always love to hear from people. We're part of a big global family.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So simple and yet so amazingly deep and meaningful. It's such a pleasure to host you today, Tracy.
Thank you so much, Mel. It's been a real pleasure meeting and talking with you. Thank you.
You're welcome. This has been the 100 Master Coaches Show. Today with Tracy and myself, Mel, signing off till the next one. Take care and bye for now.
Bye for now.
You have been watching the 100 Master Coaches series with your host, Coach Mel, MCC. Brought to you by Catalyst Coach. www.catalystcoach.live. We will be right back with our next Master Coach on the 100 Master Coaches series.